What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I take to the airwaves on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook to talk anything and everything about the NFL. And as always, I'm super excited to have another very special guest joining me for the 8th installment. Max Loeb, thank you for taking the time tonight, man. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped to be here, to say the very least. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so if you guys are not familiar with Max, you better get acquainted. He's the host of the Dog Check podcast on the Believe Network. He has a TikTok with over 110,000 followers, and he's also a recent JCU alumni where he was interning and helping out with the JCU football team. And he's a lot more X's and O's than I am, but I try and keep up. I'll do my best to run right beside him in the conversation as we go throughout the night. But definitely a knowledgeable dude. I'm super excited to have the conversation, kind of run itself.
Yeah, I'm pumped to be here. It's been a wild ride to be in the seat that I'm in now, as I'm sure same with you, but I wouldn't want to be any other place. It's been awesome.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, man. So let's really pick at your brain tonight and see how deep we can get. The first segment that we have, unfortunately, there's not many headlines to really go through, but there is something that has been nagging throughout the offseason thus far, and it's been running back conversations and their contract situations. Saquon Barkley, just recently it came out that he is willing to hold out if no contract extension is agreed to. Josh Jacobs even recently just said that he's going to not attend camp because there's no extension in place. What do you think the ending result of this is going to be? Who's got the leverage? What are your thoughts?
The leverage belongs to the teams. Yeah. That's the thing that's always been on my mind with all the Bell. Everybody points to that one, but it's the perfect example. Like, you had a guy who was in his prime, who was playing at a high level. Saquon is he's in his prime. Josh Jacobs is entering his prime. Both guys playing at a high level. Le'Veon Bell disappeared for a little bit, didn't play, came back with the Jets and was a shell of himself, and literally never saw truly meaningful and productive snaps in the NFL again. I don't know if that'll be the case with guys like Saquon and Josh Jacobs. To me, I find it hard to believe that Saquon would just straight up will not sign with the Giants.
Yeah.
My hope is that they will get something done long term. If they don't, I think there is a chance he holds out for a few games, but it's a different situation in New York than it is in Vegas. Vegas is right now at least going like this a little bit. The Giants are going like this. Right. So the Giants are in a better situation. I think Saquon knows that, and he knows he'll be the focal point of that offense. Josh Jacobs, I don't know if he is the focal point of that offense, to be honest with you. In his mind, he's like, I can go somewhere else and get maybe get better money or the money I want. Saquon may be thinking the same thing, but will he be that focal point in an offense for a team that's trending upwards, got a lot of young talent? I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, it's tough to say right now what the future holds for these guys. It's, as much as we do just want to say, this is what happens with players. They'll just hold out. They claim they're going to hold out. And then they eventually just end up signing right before the season starts. But, like you mentioned, Le'Veon Bell is the prime example of what happens when a player doesn't sign, at least the most common, I should say. And just another reason to add on to why the teams do have the leverage is because we just don't see a holdout end up turning out well for these guys. And it's unfortunate that this is what's happening. You got a guy like Quinnen Williams today getting a guaranteed $66 million or whatever it was. And Saquon sitting here, apparently the rumor is he got offered $19 million guaranteed, and that got turned down. So whether that's true or not, what is he looking for? Who knows? I don't know what the number is going to be, but I would be shocked if Saquon gets anything more north of like 22. I think 19 was probably a sweetened offer, to be quite honest with you, if it ended up being true.
If 19 was the Giants' sweetened offer, then they're not going to go. Nothing's going to get done. The Giants got to go up a little bit. I think the number that, at least from what I've seen around, the number that Saquon is looking for annually is around 14. It seems like this is from what I've seen, like I'm not in with the Giants sources or any of those guys. It seems like the Giants are around the ballpark of 12, but it's funny. Like, I saw a tweet, I think it was this morning. Daniel Jones is exponentially, significantly better with Saquon Barkley in the lineup. And it makes sense, right? At some point, you have to think, if you're the Giants, like, we got to find a way to scavenge that extra couple $1 million. The two sides right now are they're butting heads, And yeah, the Giants organization has all the leverage, but I don't know, man. This is a guy that was instrumental to a playoff team last. They don't make the playoffs without him. I know the running backs are expendable argument is a big thing, and I do believe that to an extent. But the Giants are not the same team without Saquon Barkley. So
Yeah.
I think at some point the Giants have to budge. They do.
Yeah, I agree. And if you want your quarterback that you just kind of gave like an extension to his prove it opportunity, if you will, in Daniel Jones, you're gonna want to get the most out of it and to really see what he has. And who knows? Like, you don't sign a guy to an extension and then suddenly think to yourself, okay, I'm gonna do what might not be the best to get the most out of him. So it just my thought process going to the offseason before Daniel Jones even signed his extension was, one doesn't come without the other. I think that's pretty much the bottom line in my opinion. And as much as the smoke is being blown out there, like you said, the Giants, as much leverage as they might have or as much leverage the team might have in this situation, they need to understand that their cards are on the table face up as well.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, there's not, like I said, headlines. It's very deep in the offseason at this point. Football is kind of creeping up behind us.
It really is.
As fast as it's gone by, usually the offseason drags. But regardless, we'll move on to our next segment here, and this is just the Q&A segment. I'll throw a couple questions at you, and you just got to spitball it. So the first question I have for you is going to be, as a Browns fan, what are your expectations for Deshaun Watson this season?
Oh, man. Expectations are he plays better than last year. I think hopes as a peripheral Browns fan is that he leads them to the playoffs. I think the division is a lost cause. I do. I think they're a good team. I don't think they're anywhere near the Bengals or the Ravens. I think the division is a lost cause. No AFC wildcard is going to be tough, but I think there's no doubt he has the ability to lead them to the playoffs. Their roster has also gotten exponentially better. I have been saying this since before the draft. The big one that did it for me, oddly enough, I just posted a TikTok ranking the top 5 Browns players. Like Dalvin Tomlinson, I had at 4. Like that to me is a move that's going to make them a significantly better team.
Yeah.
But they're a better team. I think Deshaun Watson will play better. I think just having another guy like Elijah Moore in the slot's going to help him out a lot too. I think they've done everything around him, and you say it every year. I've been surrounded by Browns fans for 4 years. I've heard this for 4 years. On paper, this is not a bad team. It's really, really not. They should be better. But expectations-wise, I think he will be better. I think it's hard to be worse than he was last year, to be honest. But I do expect him to be significantly better.
What's the range of touchdowns, picks, yards? Do you have any ballpark in mind?
I think combined touchdowns he'll eclipse 30. Okay. I do. Picks, I'd like to think less than 1 a game. I'll go like 13 or 14. 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio I think is fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And then probably like a 400 to 500 yard rusher, maybe like a 4,100 yard pat. Maybe 4,100 might be a little. Is that high? I think that's high.
It's going to be really interesting because this is the first year in a few years the Browns don't have a true number 2 back. Mm-hmm. And they're a run-heavy offense. They're a run-first offense. But all the moves they've made this offseason offensively have said, we're going to try to pass the ball a little bit more. So, I don't know. I mean, me saying that is leading to the conclusion that I think they're going to run the ball less. But if they run it as much, Deshaun Watson will be a part of the run game. So, I think 500 is very reasonable. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of design runs for him. But I do think he presents that. You have to respect that. It's kind of like I'm trying to think. Occasionally, the Chiefs will do it with Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. The Bengals have done it with Joe Burrow. Let's see what other teams. I saw the 49ers do it with Brock Purdy a couple times. Like, you have to respect it, but he's not like a true rushing threat.
Right. So my last question that is kind of an extension of the conversation we're on right now. You mentioned the Ravens and the – why am I blanking? The Ravens and the Bengals are out of range. What about the Steelers? Where are you ranking them against the Steelers in the division?
I think the Steelers are the worst team in the division. I do. I don't think it's like far and away. I think it's really close. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I should have said that the Browns aren't in the same range as the other two. I think it's decently close. But to me, it's just like, the Steelers, they keep finding a way to win. They keep finding a way to win, and they've been doing that since Mike Tomlin's been the coach. But their roster, it's been here the entire time. Like, they haven't made moves that have gotten them significantly better. They've relied on in-house talent developing, which has worked out, but they've relied on in-house talent developing to make themselves a better team. The Bengals have done the same thing, but we can all agree they have a better roster. They're a better team. The Ravens, well, I think we'll talk about the coaches a little bit later, but I think the Ravens, no matter who you put on that field, you have a couple key cornerstone pieces, Lamar Jackson, you have John Harbaugh coaching that team like that. That's a really good team. The Browns have gotten way better. I don't think the Steelers have done enough to keep up with them. I really don't.
Yeah, and speaking on the Steelers, as much as I feel like I am a fan of Kenny Pickett, whole Mike Tomlin thing, I think I like the direction they're heading, but they also are becoming kind of like TJ Watt dependent. TJ Watt went down last year. They dropped, I don't know what the exact number is, but a significant amount of the games he missed.
Yeah.
And then he returned. Then their win streak goes on. It's,
they were 9-2 with Watt. So whatever that was without Watt.
That math's out too. But yeah, long story short, the difference in performance is large because of the impact TJ Watt provides. So it's like, you got a team that's so dependent on one player to get by. Whether that's the case this year, I guess we'll have to see. But and he's been running into some injury issues over the last couple of years. So there's no guarantee that the second dominant Watt brother that we've seen in the last decade now is able to stay on the field. But we'll see how it all goes for that division, because it's easily one of the most competitive, I would say, in the top two most competitive division in football. Top three easily.
Definitely. Yeah.
So moving on, watching from Cedar Hills, Texas. It's a pretty far distance. Hope the Steelers keep Kenny Pickett as a quarterback. Well, I think they will. I think they will too. Yeah, I would like to assume that they're going to do that. But it's awesome to see you tuning in from Texas. The second question I have for you, Max, is going to be this. Who is one player that is currently getting a lot of hype that you are personally not buying into?
This one's tough. I am buying into the Bijan Robinson hype, but I'm not doing it as much as everybody else. That's for sure. I think that Arthur Smith's system is set up for a guy like Bijan Robinson to succeed, but to me, it doesn't seem like it's his backfield. I know they drafted him 8th. I know that he is a generational talent. He's a very good player, but Tyler Algier behind him was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. And that tells me two things. One, it tells me I think Robinson's going to be ridiculously productive this year. I do. Yeah. But I don't think that he's going to have the Saquon Barkley rookie year that everybody's looking. I really don't. For one reason or another, I think he's set up to do it. I really do. I just am not buying into it. He'll have a good year. I think he'll go well over 1,000 yards, maybe hit double-digit touchdowns. But to say he's going to set rookie records, it's just like that doesn't happen that often. We've been so spoiled with guys. I know it's a different position, but guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase coming into the league and just like lighting the league on fire. Like that doesn't happen every year. I'm not fully bought into that hype, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm right there with you, especially just because as much as it's impressive that the run game was so efficient with a guy like Marcus Mariota under center, you'd also like to think that now if Desmond Ridder is able to be a little bit better than whatever Mariota was, that's going to enable the pass more. That's going to allow them to move the ball through the air a bit more and open up the playbook for Arthur Smith in that sense. And you mentioned Tyler Algier. I don't think Cordero Patterson, although he did get phased out of the run game a bit toward the tail end, he's still going to be sitting around. Arthur Smith is a guy that likes to cycle through what he has. I don't strike him as a head coach that is going to abuse his talent. And that just kind of goes based on what we saw from, like a guy like Kyle Pitts. You're going to serve your role no matter what type of talent you are. And I could see a guy like Bijan Robinson fitting right into that type of archetype for Arthur Smith in his mind. And he's probably also going to be involved in the pass as well. We might be seeing Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson on the field at the same time. And Robinson might not even be in the backfield. So who knows what he has in store for him. But I think I'm right there behind you in the sense that it's not going to be this slam dunk record-setting crazy season that it could, I guess, in theory, end up being.
Yeah, it's tough because it's an offense. His Smith's system is so heavily dependent on running the ball more than other systems in the NFL. And when he was in Tennessee, he ran Derrick Henry into the ground. He did, but it was because he had no other option. There were no other options on that team. And gosh, I can't remember the running. They drafted a running back in like 2019 or 2020, his last couple years in Tennessee, and they tried to get him involved, and he wasn't productive. So it's not like Smith is negligent to the fact that, I'm just going to stick with this one guy. I mean, if Bijan's running the ball well, which I think he will, he'll get the most carries. But if you have guys like Algier and Cordero Patterson's a great point. Like, we're going to see times where it's Patterson and probably one of those two guys on the field, maybe all three of them on the field. Who knows? Yeah. I think that he again is smart enough to understand the talent that he has, especially if both those guys were on rookie deals like Algier and Robinson. Like, run those guys in the ground, really.
Absolutely. And I think, like you mentioned, he knows what he has, but he's not going to force feed one guy, I guess, is kind of like the bottom line. And that was an interesting point about Derrick Henry. And I was trying to think of who the guy was, and I can't remember. I'm not sure who it was. I don't know. But there are a couple running backs that are like cycling through my mind that I'm not sure if they were who you were thinking, like Jeremy McNicholas or something. I doubt it's him.
It wasn't McNicholas, no. But the fact that we can't really remember shows. Like,
Fair point. So Bijan Robinson's your answer to this one. My answer might be even more controversial to an extent, but it's kind of the same way along the same lines you're thinking. Like, I'm not thinking this player's going to flop or be nowhere near as good as the expectations are being set for him. But, I think Calvin Ridley, people are kind of expecting him to be the same exact player he was when he left and be this 1,500-yard, 1,600-yard receiver that helps Trevor Lawrence ascend the way that we've seen these other guys help their young quarterbacks ascend. I'm not saying it's not possible. He's more than talented enough based on the last time we seen him to be that guy. But at the same time, a year off of football is a year off from football. Yeah. Playing in the game, being around a different team, everything he went through, I'm very confident in who he is as a player. I know he's confident in himself. I just, it takes opportunity, talent, luck. It takes a lot of different factors for a season to happen at the level that people are expecting Calvin Ridley to have, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
And, Zay Jones was a factor in that offense last year. Christian Kirk's not going to disappear. Travis Etienne on the ground. I mean, the ball is going to be distributed. Trevor Lawrence is going to distribute it because he's good enough to do that. And I'm just not buying the Calvin Ridley being this, 1,500+ yard receiver yet. It could happen. Yeah. It could happen this year. But I think people are kind of over-exaggerating the expectations for him this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Christian Kirk is still the best receiver in that offense. I'm a big Christian Kirk guy, but I do think he's still the best receiver in that offense.
Yeah, I mean, they built quite the rapport, and he was an all-over-the-field receiver. Coming out of the slot, he was going downfield. Like, Christian Kirk was more than just what he was with Arizona, and we all thought they were nuts for paying him what they paid.
I definitely
was utilized. Oh, me too. I was baffled. But he was utilized. Doug Peterson opened up that toolbox that Christian Kirk apparently had. And, he's not one-dimensional, so he's not going to just disappear. Zay Jones isn't just going to disappear. I don't know. I think Marvin Jones went back to Detroit, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he's on Detroit. He's not on Jacksonville. He signed somewhere else, but I think it's Detroit.
There's like another name that I feel like I'm missing on that offense that – I don't know. Regardless. Evan Ingram. Jesus. Evan Ingram's not going to just disappear either. So there's just too many.
That's another contract. That's another contract thing. To me, he's not in a position to hold out, but he is holding out.
Now. So. Holy shit. Yeah, I forgot that Evan Ingram was even in that situation.
Yeah. So he'll be back. I don't know. To me, it's weird. As a Giants fan, watching him like 3 or 4 years before this, it was like, is this the same guy that was in the Giants? Is the same player? And I know people will say what they will about Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was not the issue with Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram couldn't catch a football in the Giants. That was the issue. Drops were the issue. Running the wrong routes were the issue, or miscommunication, I guess. But I don't know. He's an uber talented player. He will not go away in that offense for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So Calvin Ridley, Bijan Robinson, I think two guys that definitely fit this description pretty damn well. My final question for you, though, here is something I always like to ask every single one of my guests, and it's super interesting to hear their answers because they're all individualized. What is the best / most memorable experience of your content career thus far?
Oh my gosh, one sticks out in my mind immediately. So when my first year doing it, I still do these types of predictions, but my first year doing it, it was like almost all predictions. Like it was almost all saying, I think, this is my sleeper of the week. He's going to have a great week because of ABC. I still do that stuff, but when my first year doing it, it was almost all that because I was hoping to hit a home run with like some crazy prediction. And if you remember, I think it was 2020, the COVID year. It was Chase Claypool's rookie year. It was a game against the Eagles. He was my sleeper of the week. He scored 4 touchdowns. Like I've never seen a receiver do that. I'm pretty sure he scored a rushing touchdown. Like he scored 4 touchdowns and had God knows how many fantasy points. And I went on TikTok like after the game and saw a few people commenting like, "Oh, great prediction." I opened my phone the next morning. I gained like thousands of followers overnight.
Wow.
Yeah, like it was insane. And there's been other experiences like that where I've gained like a couple thousand followers overnight because of one video, but it wasn't because of a prediction that I made. It was because a video did well, or I was given advice or something like that. Like people found the content valuable, but that prediction was I couldn't write that. I probably will never do that again, to be honest with you.
That's awesome.
It was crazy.
I can't even. Well, Chase Claypool wasn't, the Chase Claypool we know now. At that point, I mean, that guy had so much promise for being a prominent receiver in any type of. It felt like he could be anywhere, but now obviously, regardless of the situation. But that's awesome. Just being able to hit on something like that. Have you hit on anything else that's been like, okay, that's crazy, but anything that's okay, yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Or that was.
I'm
crazy.
trying to think. The biggest one. So. Before the draft, it would have been that following season, Micah Parsons was my number 1 prospect. I had said that multiple times. I had been praising him out the wazoo. And granted, he went at like 11, I think, so it's not like it was a crazy pick. But he far and away is the best prospect in that draft. And that was a big one for me. Last season, I'm trying to think of like the playoff teams or teams that I predicted. I don't think there's been any like super, super crazy ones. The only other one I can think of, I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, but the Titans were playing the Jets, and the Titans were like this juggernaut. They were like 5-1. The Jets had won like 1 or 2 games, and to me, Titans were heavy favorites. To me, it's like, this makes sense. This is an upset pick because they were like double-digit favorites, and the Jets were at home. It was a bad weather game, and I think it was the Titans at least. It was definitely the Jets, and I picked that, and they won. That was a big one. But to be honest with you, I've strayed away from the predictions a little bit and more just like general advice and how I go about things. But those are big ones for sure.
I think I know if it was a Titans-Jets game. I remember a couple of years ago, I do a survivor pool every year, and I took the Titans in against the Jets, and I remember just standing there with my hands on my head. Like, this is actually about to happen because that was like, what was it, like week 6? It was like around the 5 to 8 week period. And I was shell-shocked watching this game. And I feel like I vividly remember seeing Tannehill hit like, was it Austin Hooper at the time, up the seam, and he got down at like the 2. Or no, maybe he dropped it. I can't remember. But it looked like, I think it was a 4th down. He needed the ball, or they needed the catch. I think he ended up dropping it, and they lost. I think I know exactly what game you're talking about because I remember picking the Titans and getting booted against the Jets.
Yeah, I vividly remember not picking them in my Survivor. Think about it, yeah.
Oh man, that was heartbreaking. I hate Survivor. My love-hate relationship with Survivor pools grows substantially every single year.
I'm with you, 100%.
All right, so move right into our next segment here. This is going to be the Hilltop of Hypothesis segment. If you're new around here, if you're not familiar, essentially the Hilltop of Hypothesis is where my guest, Max in this case, of course, brings a take that is NFL related and something that he's willing to die defending. Everyone's got a take like this, Max. Let's hear yours.
So I was talking to my friends about it this morning. This is always, whenever my friends and I discuss football, somehow, some way, if the Giants or the Steelers come up, because a bunch of my friends are from Pittsburgh, Steelers fans, the greatest throw of all time, to me, and again, this could be biased because I'm a Giants fan. My friends could have bias because they're Steelers fans. My friends say the greatest throw of all time is Big Ben's throw to Santonio Holmes in the corner of the end zone. I can't remember which Super Bowl it was. When they beat the Cardinals, it was the game-winning catch. That's an incredible throw. Don't get it twisted. The other one that always comes up in the conversation, nobody ever defends this. I have one friend who's like a diehard Aaron Rodgers fan. He always says this. It was the Packers-Cowboys playoff game like 6 or 7 years ago. Rodgers was rolling out to his left, threw it across his body like 40 yards down the sideline to Jared Cook, out of bounds, timeout, kick a field goal, they win. Those always come up, but I will die on the hill that the best throw of all time is Super Bowl 46, Eli Manning's throw down the sideline to Mario Manningham. 50 yards down the field, literally could not have been a better ball. Defender in his face, between two defenders, right along the sidelines. Bill Belichick watching on the side. Like it was it's the most incredible throw I've ever seen in my life. And I just, maybe I'm biased because I'm a Giants fan. I don't understand how people don't see it. Ben's throw, to me, incredible throw. Maybe a smaller window. I don't know if it's a smaller window, but maybe half the distance of the throw. Eli Manning threw that ball almost 50 yards. To me, that's like, it leaves me speechless watching it sometimes.
I have to go watch it myself to see. I've probably seen it before, but just to get a visual again, because the greatest throw of all time conversation is very, I guess, opinionated to an extent.
Yeah.
It depends on what, of course, a lot of football discourse is, but people just value different things and value what makes a throw more difficult. Like, to me, the throwing platform somebody is coming off of and the pressure a player is under, and then, of course, how accurate it ends up being and the result of it, that is what's important to me. But some people, I've posted videos talking about, some of the best throws, this exact conversation. And there are people saying, I value the guy that can sit in the pocket and, if he gets that half a second or so and can just place it right in the bucket, that half a second, he's like, kind of like some of Joe Burrow's throws, that type of play style, the throws he makes. Those are the types of throws that some people value more than those that maybe Justin Herbert or Josh Allen make, where they're on the run, throwing cross. Like those I think are the most difficult and the most impressive, but people value different things. Yeah. But I have to go watch this throw that you're talking about and see it again, because it sounds like a throw that Eli Manning probably doesn't typically make, which makes it even crazier too.
No,
it's knowing the kind of guy Eli Manning was.
Yeah, the thing about Eli, and I'm so passionate about him because I grew up watching him, but I've noticed like the best balls he throws are always the balls along the sidelines. He's mastered the back shoulder fade. It was actually popularized by Odell with him, really before anybody else. But he was great with it with Hakeem Nicks and guys like that. But those balls along the sidelines is just something about it with you. Like he just makes those throws. He doesn't make a lot of other throws. Like I'll be real. Like I love Eli Manning. He is a huge reason I love football as much as I do. He's a 500 quarterback. That's what he was. But he played well when the lights were the brightest, especially in the year of Super Bowl 46. But that throw to me is just like it's special. I don't know if guys could replicate it, to be honest with you. I'm sure if you tried enough, you could. But to me, it's almost a little bit lucky to me. It's that crazy.
Hall of Famer? Not Hall of Famer?
We just had this discussion with my friends this morning too. To me, I think he is. I think it's hard not to. He's not going to be a first ballot guy. That's the reality of it. Stinks as a Giants fan thinking that, but it is the reality of it. But to say he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame on the biggest stage, one, stopping the perfect season, and you don't stop that perfect season without him or without Tyree. It's really more Tyree than him, but you don't do it without Eli Manning. And then that Super Bowl 46, when they beat the Patriots again, that Super Bowl he played really well, but the game before that, the NFC Championship against the San Francisco 49ers, I don't know if I've seen a quarterback play that well in a long time. Eli was he was hit double-digit times, sacked like 6 times. You've probably seen the meme of Eli Manning with his shoulder pad down, helmet crooked, calling a timeout. That was that game. Like he was beat up, and it would just deliver throw after throw after throw after throw. Like that was a special performance. You can't take that away from him. And this is super corny. And to be honest with you, it shouldn't get you into the Hall of Fame saying this, but I do think it holds some merit. You can't write the story of the NFL without Eli Manning. I think that's very true. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. I don't know if that gets you into the Hall of Fame, but to me, I think he is. Not first ballot, as much as I would love it, but I think he is.
I've never heard that before. You can't write the – I've never heard that with anybody, but for Eli, I mean, absolutely, you are correct. One of the most important moments in football history he was at the centerpiece of. So, hey, and to be honest, politics play into that in positive and negative fashion. So if they're going to apply negatively, they might as well apply positively too. And it's a solid argument. It's like the Hall of Fame at this point, the state of it, you know, in my opinion, I think the standards are too low. That's a whole nother debate. But where they're at currently, I would probably lean to agree. I'd have to think about it a little bit harder. But I think just because of the standards of the Hall of Fame nowadays, I think it's safe to say that Eli Manning probably belongs.
And I think if we're being real, his last name helps a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he does belong.
We'll be interested to see. And he's not too far out at this point. What is it?
It's going to be eligible. So Daniel Jones' rookie year was his last year. So I think at least. So that would mean 2 more years.
2 more years. All right. I guess time will tell. Moving right along to our next segment, but of course, Pokemon is in the comments as he always is, showing love, dropping a nice hello. So we'll move on to our next segment here. This is another fun one. This is called the Caveman's Advocate. If you're not familiar with what the Caveman's Advocate is, essentially I'm going to present a topic to debate to Max, and whatever side he takes, I have to take the opposite and play devil's advocate, hence Caveman's Advocate, despite whether or not I agree with him, truly. So the debate that we have on tap for you here, I don't know if it's going to be an interesting one. I kind of pulled this one out of a hat in a way because I wasn't sure what to set the number at, but I guess we'll find out. Is Bill Belichick still a top 2 head coach in the NFL?
That's tough. My mind immediately says no. I think consensus right now, a lot of people, including myself, will say Andy Reid is the best coach in the NFL. I think that's a very, very fair statement to make. I definitely think he's a better coach than Bill Belichick right now. And the elephant in the room here is the fact that without Brady, Belichick really hasn't done anything. And, it's that whole Brady versus Belichick debate. That's why Brady left, or at least a big reason why he left. And Brady left to go win a Super Bowl. Bill Belichick was in New England with a lot of the same pieces. Granted, they were aging pieces, but a lot of the same pieces. And they did make the playoffs, and they lost to Buffalo in the first round. But I think that was 2 years after Brady. That wasn't the year after Brady. That was 2 years after Brady.
Yep.
But he really hasn't done anything. And to me, when I look at how good is a coach, I try to see who's done the most with the least. And I know I talked about Harbaugh a little bit. I think you could argue for him to be that 2 guy. I think you could argue for Kyle Shanahan too. There's a lot of talent on that defense now, so it's harder to argue, but I think you could with Shanahan. They've been good for a long time. Haven't had the most talented roster. But as crazy as this is about to sound, the guy that sticks out to me is Mike Vrabel. The Titans every single year have literally nothing but Derrick Henry on their team. And I love Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry's a great player. When he's at his best, he's the best running back in the league. I don't think people disagree with that. But the Titans have, outside of last year, had won their division for like 3 years in a row. They made noise in the playoffs. They never got to a Super Bowl, but that year where they had Tannehill, Henry, and A.J. Brown, they lost the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. They beat the Ravens, the number 1 seed. I'm pretty sure that was the same year. But every year, the Titans are a tough team to play. It's because of how they're coached. They're tough on the defensive side of the ball. They have an identity of running the football, taking shots over the top when it seems necessary, but they're going to punch you in the mouth. And I think that's a big testament to Mike Vrabel. I also think you could argue Mike Tomlin, too. I mean, we talked about the Steelers roster. Like, I think it's decently talented, but last year, man, Trubisky was bad the first few weeks of the season. He was bad. I was at the Browns-Steelers game Thursday night. He was bad. It was bad. And then Pickett came in, and there were growing pains, but it was I don't know how many winning seasons he's had in a row. I can't keep track. He does an incredible job with that team, too. I think there are a lot of guys, and you look at Belichick's track record and what he's done. He had a huge hand in drafting Mac Jones where he did. Mac Jones got benched last year for a little bit. To me, there's nothing, or not much at least, that shows that Belichick is who he once was.
Okay, fair enough. And when you touched on something, I was gonna bring up myself. He had a huge hand in drafting Mac Jones. There's obviously no general manager presence over there. He kind of is that presence in the Patriots franchise. I personally don't think it's fair to pin his shortcomings as a general manager against him as a coach. I think there's a massive difference between who he is as a coach and as a general manager. And I think I could even argue that the tail end of the last few years with Brady, that roster wasn't that great. I mean, they were still decent, but that was because Belichick was putting together what is typically a top 7 on average defense in that span of time. And you still have the greatest quarterback ever playing on the other side of the ball. So, and then he leaves. I think it's, how do you not expect a drop off? Anybody that loses that caliber of quarterback that's had him for so long is going to see pretty substantial drop off in the performance of at least the offense we saw. They started off with Cam Newton. They actually didn't do terrible to begin with. And then Cam Newton got COVID and things just kind of snowballed downhill and they ended up finishing 7-9. Or 7-10, whatever the season length was at that point. But, point being, it seems like the last few years, especially even at the tail end of Brady's tenure, their roster had pieces, but it wasn't necessarily talented pieces. And when you lose Brady, it needs to be more talented. Belichick is to blame for that, but not because he's a bad coach at the same time, because the defense, which is his specialty, has been there pretty much the entire way through. And I think Mac Jones being benched after what was a pretty stellar rookie season. I mean, I don't think many people expected him to be so calm, so cool, so collected, on time. He looked like a veteran, truly, in his first year. And there's a clear change. You go from Belichick went from Brady to Cam Newton, and there was a massive drop off. You have a guy like Mac Jones who goes from Josh McDaniels, who is a proven coordinator, to a guy like Matt Patricia. It's a similar drop off. We saw similar results that were very negative. Is that against Brady? So are we going to pin Brady for things that are in his control but not as a coach? I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's tough. I do think that's a great point. Saying you're right. You can't blame Belichick for general manager shortcomings. That's a good point. To me, it's even though the defensive side of the ball is his specialty, he's the head coach of the football team, so he oversees the offense too. The offensive coordinator coordinates the offense, but he oversees it. And as the head coach, you have that type of power, especially with the first-year offensive coordinator say, hey, I don't like this. Let's change this. And the product the Patriots put on the field last year was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And to me, I don't know if it's a lack of coaching. I still feel like Belichick is a very good coach, but like right now, if I was asked to take 3 coaches, I'd take Andy Reid, I'd take Mike Vrabel, and then I have to think hard about the third one. I'd have to think, I don't know, Belichick, Harbaugh, Tom, like one of those guys. But I would take Mike Vrabel. To me, it's every single year for the past 5 years, the Titans were a good team, not just like a borderline playoff team. They were a good team. Last year, that's an exception. But last year, they were leading the Jaguars in essentially a game for the division title for 3 of the 4 quarters with a third-string quarterback who they signed off the street a week before the game. So, to me, that speaks volumes to who Mike Vrabel is. And I think Belichick is a great coach. I don't think I could ever argue against that because you're right. The Patriots roster hasn't been super talented, but it's Mike Vrabel has elevated, I think, above him right now.
Do you have Mike Vrabel just in general at number 2 next to Andy Reid?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think of other guys. I mean, I love Dable, but it's a little too early for me to just put him up there. I love him, but that would be one. I'm trying to think of other coaches who have done a lot with little.
McVay? Well, not little, but McVay
I think McVay is definitely a top 10 coach. It'd be tough to argue top 5. I think it would. But he's a great coach. Great coach. And the thing with him is he's so young that he's only going to get better for the next, like, I know there's all this discussion about him walking away from coaching, but if he sticks in coaching, he's only going to get better for the next, like, 2 decades, which is crazy to think about. He won't stay with the Rams for 20 years, but he could bring them another title or two. I think Pete Carroll, what he did last year was really impressive. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I couldn't confidently put him above Vrabel. I'm trying to think what other coaches come to your mind in terms of top tier coaches.
I think Mike Tomlin. I'm a huge Mike Tomlin supporter, because I'm a big believer in consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Tomlin has, put the proof in the pudding. It doesn't matter who's on his team; he's somehow getting the job done. And even though it's been a bit since I've seen some postseason success, that team is always seeming to perform over expectation, and that's also why for Belichick's sake, even though he's 25-26 since post Brady here, the team's still always competing. The last few years, we're going into the season thinking, okay, the Patriots are the third worst team, the worst team in the division, yet somehow they're always hanging around the 500 mark. Last year they could have easily been a 500 team if his offensive personnel doesn't shit the bed with 20 seconds left in a tied game, and Chandler Jones is stiff arming our quarterback for a touchdown to end it. It's like they could have been a 9-8 team in a year where they were a laughing stock to everyone surrounding them, and they had a backup quarterback coming in for a brief amount of time. I always have a hard time in my mind arguing, do I prefer who's at the literal top with the Andy Reeds and the Kyle Shanahans and the Sean McVays as of late, or am I going to prioritize the guys that are doing more than what they're expected to do consistently? It's a battle that I have with myself because I think both are impressive in their own right. And I guess it comes down to personal preference, but I think I wish I would have used top 3 in this argument, because I think top 3 would have made it tougher. Top Definitely. 2 was it's kind of hard to argue that at this point. Yeah. This year, I think, is make or break for Bill Belichick. I know he's hot seat conversation. Whether that's true or not is one thing, but if he's top 3, that'll be determined from this year. I think it's kind of put up or shut up for the Patriots right now.
Yeah, I could not agree more.
It's going to be. I don't know if they get DeAndre Hopkins, if that makes them that much more competitive. Obviously, it does, but I don't know. It just seems like the grand scheme of the Patriots at the moment is a lack of talent all over. Does adding an aging DeAndre Hopkins to what was a pretty Dudley passing offense last year do that much?
I don't think so. But the thing is, like, you add one receiver like that, your offense could flourish. Like, the example I think of is A.J. Brown last year.
Yeah.
Like, obviously Jalen Hurts was great, and Devontae Smith made strides. But A.J. Brown took that offense to a new level. I haven't seen a receiver coming to a new team do that in a while. That was the first time I really saw a receiver going to a new team, like, fully elevate the whole offense. It's usually a quarterback. And if it's not a quarterback, it's honestly usually a running back.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen a receiver do that in a long time. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that connection is what I think there was the thought process behind the groundwork was laid out for the young quarterback, star receiver blueprint. I think it was kind of laid out. People were kind of skeptical if it was proven or not. And then A.J. Brown goes to Philadelphia. You see what happened with Jalen Hurts, where before he was borderline a top 16 guy. Now people are putting him in their top 5 quarterbacks after this year. And that's all because of what A.J. Brown has been able to provide. I mean, all credit goes to him without a doubt. Okay. So, A.J. Brown, we'll see what happens with DJ Moore and Justin Fields. That's another experiment at hand.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's the best way to put it. But long story short, A.J. Brown is absolutely, he's deserving of a lot of what has happened development-wise with the Eagles as of late.
Yeah, very much so. And it's weird. Like, I hate comparing the DeAndre Hopkins situation to that, because the ceiling of Mac Jones and the ceiling of Jalen Hurts is night and day. But, it's similar.
Right. I mean, it might be worth a shot. And it sounds like I actually just got a tweet talking about the Titans. It seems like he's They're a heavy favorite supposedly to be landing Hopkins now out of nowhere. We'll see how much that matters in a few weeks. Pokemon says Belichick is the
Tennessee.
Did you see that tweet that said, well, I'll come back to this in a second, Pokemon. It was a tweet, I think, by Dave Kalugi. He's a fantasy guy. He tweeted out, Julio, don't go to Tennessee or you'll end up like these guys. And it was a picture of Julio. Yeah, that picture hit me hard. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
It's true. Like
it's true.
Where wide receivers go to die for some reason at the end of their career.
Yeah. The craziest one is Julio.
Yeah.
Like Julio came from Atlanta. He was injured that whole year, but Julio came from Atlanta like on a per game basis, still producing like a great wide receiver, and he just like it was bad.
Yeah, it was ugly. I mean, the guy, it seemed like he needed to put every ounce of energy into an individual play, and he'd make that one play every time he was actually on the field, and then he just disappeared. It's like nowhere to be found. We thought I at least was a part of the conglomerate that thought that team was going to be powerhouse now that you're adding Julio Jones to AJ Brown and Derrick Henry, but ended up not being too much of anything. Pokemon said Belichick is the perfect classic coach. His timeout usage is top notch. Ability to throw out a game plan the second he sees a mismatch, but the old ways of getting rid of talent is outdated. I also think the premise of the whole argument you were making is it's not even necessarily that Belichick is not great. It's just his counterparts at this point are the ones that are advancing with the game, whereas he's still kind of stuck. To Pokemon's point, he's still kind of stuck in his older ways, which worked in the early 2010s, mid last decade. But now it's like the game is evolving. You know, the whole talk about whether or not a defensive head coach is bad, it's not good. I mean, that's a whole argument in itself. He's just not in a state to progress with the game like these other guys are, which doesn't really speak to him. It just speaks more to the age of football nowadays.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so move on to our final segment here, the most anticipated segment of the show, and I enjoy doing this one a whole lot. The Caveman's Quiz Game.
Oh, here we go.
If you're not familiar with the Caveman's Quiz Game, here is how it works. There are 8 questions, 2 easy, 2 medium, and 2 hard each. Easy equals 10, medium equals 20, hard equals 30. One impossible question worth 50 points. There's a wager question in which you get to decide what the point amount is. It's like Final Jeopardy, the best way to describe it. And we will determine the category of that wager question by spinning a wheel. How do you feel? You get a trivia? How do you do with this kind of stuff?
If it's football trivia, I think at least. We'll see.
I guess we're going to find out. I have people that come on here and say, I'm great at trivia, and then they bomb it. And then they say, I suck at trivia, and they kill it. So I can never take anybody's word for it before they actually get into it.
That's fair.
But we'll get into the first easy question, which is going to be this. Who has the most Super Bowl MVPs in NFL history?
Got to be Tom Brady, right?
It is Tom Brady. You are correct. No need to overthink it early on. It's an easy 10 points. Break the ice. Just get comfortable. That's what the easy questions are for. 10 points for you on the board. The second easy question here is this. Who led the NFL in rushing yards last season?
Who led the NFL in rushing yards last season? Oh, man. Oh, gosh, I'm blanking here. Let's think. Rushing yards. Let's see. No. Nick Chubb?
It was Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs
was
the rushing leader last year. Mr. 80-yard touchdown run to seal the deal was the rushing leader. But that's fine. Still 10 points going into it.
That one. That's okay.
It's like for rushing at least, it's kind of a little bit of a toss-up. You got your primary names at the top of the list, and you just got to dip your hand in the pot if you don't have it right away.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, all right, moving on to the medium question. Your first medium is going to be this. How many games ended in a tie last season?
Let's think. The Giants tied a game. Was there another one? That's the real question. I'm gonna go with 2. I'm gonna guess that there was one more, but I know the Giants definitely tied. They tied against Washington. I'll go 2.
You are correct. There were 2 games that tied last season. So That's a free 20 points. After that, I got to find the question because I have it written down who the second tie was.
Yeah, I was trying to think who the second tie was.
It was between ties. No, where is it?
Was the Buffalo game a tie? Buffalo, Cincinnati?
No, it was the Colts Texans, I think, like week 1.
Oh, you're right. It was week 1. Yeah.
I think that's what it was. The Texans Colts tied week 1. That was the other one. And then, of course, you named the other one. So 2 ties, regardless. You are correct. And I forgot to show you the leaderboard. Silly me. This is what the leaderboard looks like. You have the leader of Dave Klug at 201 points, Jared at 200, and then, of course, your stragglers in the 3, 4, and 5 spot. So you have an opportunity to crack this here with a total of 30 points. I can't believe I forgot to even present that to you.
It's okay. I got to get there.
30 points. You're well on your way. So your second medium question is going to be this. Who are the 2 Georgia defensive tackles that have been selected in the top 15 of the NFL draft over the last 2 years?
Both, correct me if I'm wrong, both by the same team. Jalen Carter and, what's his name? Jordan Reed? No, not Jordan Reed. That's the tight end, right? Jordan Davis. There we go. Jordan Davis.
Yes, it is Jordan Davis. You are correct. Yeah. I was about to go, nope, it's Jordan Davis. And I'm like, you might correct himself, but you got it. Jordan Davis.
I knew it was Jordan.
Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, both selected by the Eagles, as you mentioned. So that puts you at 70 points because there is a bonus if you get both questions in the difficulty range right. So you're up to 70 points. Pretty good start going into the hard questions here. So the first hard is going to be this. What is the highest passer rating possible?
158.3.
You are correct. You didn't even flutter for a second. You did not budge.
That one I do know. I'm a numbers guy, so I know that one.
158.3 is correct. That puts you at 100 total points. With 1 hard, 1 impossible, and a wager left on the table. You're in the running for this.
Let's do it.
Your second hard question is this. Who is the only player to win Comeback Player of the Year twice?
Ooh, man, that's tough. Comeback Player of the Year twice. Did he win one recently? No. Okay. Comeback Player of the Year twice. Jim Kelly?
It is not Jim Kelly. It was Chad Pennington, once with the Dolphins and once with the Jets.
Yeah, that's a tough one. No way I could have got that.
It's a hard question, that's for sure. But, yeah, he won it once I can't remember the order of it, but once he got hurt, returned, of course, how it usually goes. The other was for just overall poor performance. And I think it was he won it, and then I think he won it, then didn't get it, and then got it the year after. I don't remember the exact timeline of it, but he did win twice. Jets and Dolphins were the 2 teams he was a part of at the time. But still, 100 points. You're on to your impossible question here. This could be for 50 points. Then you're going into the wager with 150 if you can nail this one. So that question is going to be this. What team had the largest positive point differential in the NFL last season? Positive.
It's got to be either Eagles or Chiefs. I'll go Eagles.
It was not the Eagles. The positive point, it was the 49ers. They had the best positive point differential.
Okay.
Yes. Interesting. So the 49ers are at the top of that list, I think. But now that what's the difference between positive and wait, I got to give you a different impossible question that seems void.
I'll take another one.
Positive point. Is there a difference between positive and just point differential? I don't think so. Hold on.
No, positive. I mean, I understood the question. I'll take another impossible one.
Let me just double check. Usually I have these questions stapled down, but I'm sitting here like double checking myself. I'm like, wait a minute, is that right? All right, we'll do point differential. It was the 49ers. They were at 173. The Eagles were at 133. The Bills were actually second with 169.
I was thinking about the Bills. I knew the Bills had some big blowouts.
Yes, so the Chiefs, Bills, Eagles, and 49ers were all in that conversation, but it was the 49ers who edged the Bills out by 4 points. So I'm not going crazy. Wow. 49ers are the correct answer.
Okay.
All right, no worries, though. 100 points going into the final wager question. And like I said, there's a wheel spin that will determine what not the difficulty. It'll determine what the category of the question is. So let me share my screen real quick. And we are going to spin the wheel.
All right.
Here we have the stats, draft, history, awards, transactions, and miscellaneous. You'll understand if it lands on it. Questions. Spinning the wheel. We have draft. Draft. You comfortable with draft?
Yeah. That's probably one of the better ones I could have gotten, I'd say. Fingers crossed. Can't jinx myself. But.
All right. The draft it is. How many points do you want to wager? You have 100.
I'm wagering all of them. I'm wagering all 100.
He's going for it all.
I have to.
So this will tie him with Jarrett if he's able to nail it on the head. For 100 points, the draft wager question is this. Who was the highest drafted running back since 2010?
Saquon Barkley.
You are correct. This couldn't have been an easier question for you. Saquon Barkley is correct. He was drafted, it was 2018, I think, right? Something like that. Close enough. Regardless, you're right.
Around there.
You're right. Saquon Barkley was drafted second. Was the second overall.
Yeah.
To the New York Giants, and he has been the highest drafted running back ever since. And that's for another 100 points. It could not have worked out for you a little bit anymore, getting that type of question. But you tie Jarrett for second place. So now you're tied at second with Jarrett.
All right.
Congratulations. It was a good run.
Thank you. I should have got the Josh Jacobs question is going to haunt me forever. I'm never going to get that question wrong again.
Oh man, you're right. You would have got that. You would have had a pretty solid lead. That's tough.
Yeah, that's okay.
You can't think like that. It was a good run otherwise. But hey, that's all I got for us, Max. I appreciate you taking the time. It was great conversations. I expected it to be. So thank you once again for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Be sure you guys are checking out Max. All of his socials are down in the description below. His podcast, The Dog Check, the socials for that will also be down there. If you enjoyed, you guys know the full bit. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. But I'll see you guys next week, 7:30 p.m. Peace out.
Thanks, guys.